So I just returned from the Steadicam Silver Plus Workshop and I just wanted to share my experience while the memory is still fresh. Is it worth it and should you take it? Now these questions are almost impossible to answer because everyone's situation is so different. We had people who are fresh out of film school, we had people who work on sets every day, some even had their own rigs, and we had people like me who aren't even in the film industry really. So this is not so much a review as just my subjective impressions from the course to help you make up your own mind whether you should go or not. But I will talk about value towards the end of the video, so keep watching. Now the Silver Plus Workshop is a new thing. In fact, I think it was the first one of its kind. So the Bronze Workshop is 2 days, Silver is 3 days, and Gold is 5 days, with Silver Plus sitting somewhere between Silver and Gold. The workshop was held in a hotel, in one of the conference rooms and around the premises. Unlike the Gold Workshop, it wasn't residential, so everybody had to sort out their own accommodation and transportation, but they did provide pretty nice lunches and refreshments and snacks throughout the day. There were 16 of us, so everything divided neatly into fours. We had 4 main rigs and 4 instructors, so each group of 4 students rotated throughout the day through every exercise and every instructor. And the instructors were just awesome. Not only are they masters of their craft with something like 100 years of experience between the 4 of them, but they were also just super open, very kind and chill. Being a great Steadicam operator doesn't necessarily translate into being a great instructor, but I feel like all of them did a terrific job. They were supportive, encouraging and attentive, and I feel like they struck the perfect balance between giving you instructions while also letting you feel it out and figure stuff out on your own. I mean, that's what you're really paying for, the face-to-face time with the best operators out there, and the access to the kit, of course. So now I'll take you through each day and share my experiences, but I do apologize in advance about the lack of B-roll because the course is very intense and there's very little downtime to do filming. So day 1 is probably the worst time you'll ever have with Steadicam in your life, and I guess that's why they don't do one-day workshops, because people would just walk out writing the whole thing off. Because wearing the rig is unlike anything I've tried before. It's hard and it's weird. I think it's mostly hard on your brain because it has to figure out this complex movement puzzle. I mean, you have this heavy external load pulling on you and you have to keep balance while moving around and shifting the weight and while performing these very fine movements with your hands. Robin Thwaites put it best, I think. He said flying a Steadicam is like playing piano while also carrying it on your back. And that's devilishly accurate. You have to be rigid and relaxed at the same time. And it's a very unusual feeling, and it's not at all about your strength. Going into the workshop, I thought I'd have an advantage. I go to the gym, I work out, I can deadlift 150 kilos for reps, so I have a pretty strong back. I thought I'd be fine. But nope, it had no effect whatsoever. I mean, the muscles that got sore that first day, I never even knew they existed. And it's kind of a weird static load. You can't really train for it with anything other than Steadicam. But the good news is that if you are on the smaller and weaker side, that shouldn't preclude you from trying Steadicam. In fact, it can work out to your advantage. Because if you can't overpower the rig, you will almost be forced to relax and let the equipment do the work, which incidentally is the correct way of operating. When you see these seasoned pros fly their rigs, it looks almost effortless, like the camera just floats. And us newbies, we were struggling. I mean, we couldn't wear the rig for more than a few minutes at a time, especially the heavier ones. The main problem of that first day was finding a setup that works for you. Because to really try Steadicam, it has to be correctly set up for you in the first place. And that means 3 things: fitting the vest, adjusting the arm and balancing the sled. That last one was the least troublesome. Balancing the sled came pretty intuitively to me, and besides there are a bunch of great tutorials here on YouTube about it. But the vest and the arm, that's a different story. First of all, as a newbie you have no frame of reference of how it's supposed to feel. You put on the rig and it feels awkward, uncomfortable, painful even, and you have no idea how much of that is to be expected and how much of that is due to incorrect setup. And fitting the vest is a very personal thing. I, for example, found out that the exo vest fits me perfectly while the regular vest cuts off the circulation in my legs, so they go numb after a while. Other people faced different challenges. The arm was even trickier to set up. It has that front to back and side to side adjustment, so if the sled is getting away from you, you need to adjust the socket block in the opposite direction. And it's a pain because you need to dock, take off the arm, adjust the socket block, which is super fiddly, put the arm back, take the sled, test it and do it all over again. But you don't want to take too much time because obviously you want to maximize your time in the rig, and you also have other students waiting for you, so you end up in this good enough zone where you fly the rig with suboptimal settings, fighting against it. Now that was a bit frustrating. I wish we all had our own vest and arm and we would set them up on day one and from then on just concentrate on operating, but I do get why that's not feasible. The instructors did their best with helping us with vests and arms, but there's a limit to how much they can diagnose visually just by looking at you. Again, it's a very personal thing, and it's a weird problem that's unique to the workshop, because if you had your own rig, you would just set it and forget it. To be fair, with each consecutive day these problems became less and less noticeable, but some people never found a vest that fit them perfectly or had to share a vest, which is not ideal. Day 2 was my favorite, I think. It was almost entirely practical and we had great time with the instructors. They devised these creative shots that incorporated all the stuff we've learned so far: panning, tilting, jibbing the arm and switching into Don Juan and back, and they threw in some extra complexities like going through doors and stairs. It was a lot to take in, but it was fun, and I think we were all proud of ourselves because it was only the day 2 and already we were using the Steadicam not just as a stabilizer but as a storytelling tool. Working with the instructors, especially the absolute legend Paul Edwards, drove home what the Steadicam is really all about. It's not just about moving the camera through space without jitters, it's about in-camera editing. Rather than just cutting from a wide to a medium to a tight, you can smoothly float in from one to another, or you can transition smoothly from a follow shot into a POV and back. So there I was just barely coping with the weight of the rig and just about putting the lens in the general vicinity of where it needs to be. The whole thing clicked for me suddenly. It's all about how you use this floating camera to reveal or withhold information, manipulating what the audience is aware of at any given moment. And that's when I truly realized what a powerful storytelling tool this is, and that very instant I fell in love with the Steadicam. We ended the second day by switching the Volt on, and if you don't know, Volt is just a bunch of motors and sensors around the gimbal that help keep the sled level. Basically, it's an electronically assisted horizon and tilt, and it made our awkward shots instantly much more presentable. And I was pleasantly surprised by just how invisible Volt is. It doesn't really change the way you operate fundamentally, and it doesn't compromise on that direct tactile feel that makes Steadicam great in the first place. The third day was my least favorite, mainly because the fatigue caught up with me, my back was sore and achy, and I just felt like I was operating worse than the day before. It was also challenging because we started the day by introducing low mode, which is more awkward and feels much heavier. Again, we rotated through the instructors and there were 2 low mode shots that focused on changing the camera's height. So we had to do a lot of booming in low mode while trying to keep consistent headroom, and I just felt like I was too tired and my shots were garbage. The third setup was something entirely different. We had Steadicam hard mounted to a Rickshaw, which is basically a wheelbarrow for the operator. We took turns playing the grips and we were pushing that rickshaw really fast on the uneven surfaces. It was tough and very hard to control the inertia of the sled, and I feel like we all failed the exercise, but it was good fun, and it was exciting to see Steadicam in a completely different context. The fourth station was the show and tell with Martin Porter, who operates in a live TV environment. He had a total Mad Max vibe going on with his rig, with a bunch of custom-made parts and antennas and wires everywhere. It was just so complex. And I never realized just how hard live TV is. There's so much stuff to keep track of, it's crazy. And there are no second takes in live TV, so the pressure on the operator must be insane. At the end of the third day, the Tiffen guys invited us all out to dinner, and we had a nice meal and chat. That was a good opportunity to meet people from the other groups, because throughout these first 3 days we pretty much stayed with the same 3 people. On the last day I felt much better and felt prepared to take on the challenge of our graduation shots. The instructors came up with these crazy Oners that were the evolution of the shots from day 2. One was especially long and intricate, with sudden whip pans moving in and out of POV shots, intricate sudden reveals and framing control, and the second one was tricky with the timing of the action and headroom control. And I think we were all a little bit stretched beyond our capabilities, at least I was. I felt like the instructors set the bar about 25% higher than we were realistically capable of achieving. And critiquing our shots, they focused on things like composition, timing of the action, the storytelling bits. And I was like, man, I'm just trying to survive in here and hit my marks and get some decent framing without inducing motion sickness, and you're talking about things that are 3 levels up from that. I feel like I was at least a couple of weeks away from actually operating the camera instead of operating the Steadicam, if that makes sense. But it was a fun challenge, and it's all relative, If you judge our shots by the standards of a real director, then yeah, they were all unusable and we were all fired. But if you keep in mind that that was our 4th day of flying Steadicam ever, then it's actually pretty damn impressive what complex shots we were able to achieve in such a short time. Did we come out of this workshop as Steadicam operators? God no. If anything, these were our first baby steps in a very, very long journey. So how did I do? Well, I definitely wasn't the worst, but I wasn't the best either. And again, I just don't feel like I was at a place where I could demonstrate my skills as an operator. I was still in that survival mode, struggling with the basics, pretty much like every other newbie. And in the end, what really makes you a great operator in the long run is not your stamina or your endurance or even how smooth your shots are. It's your eye, your taste, your sense of timing, and your knowledge of film grammar, and all of that has very little to do with flying the Steadicam per se. And to me at least, that sounds like good news. We ended the 4th day with a nice closing ceremony, handing out certificates and thanking each other, and that was it. Now, was it worth it? Now, the problem with Steadicam is this chicken and egg situation. To get better at it, to start charging for it, you need to practice with it. And for that, you need to own a rig or have regular access to one, which is almost impossible. I remember Tiffen guys being mildly frustrated by the lack of questions from us, but I think that it was pretty clear to everybody that the answer to almost any questions you might have is practice. I mean, you can talk about shoes and stuff, but everything comes down to practice and individualization through trial and error, both of which are predicated on you owning a rig. And I feel like that was the real unspoken question on everyone's mind. Does this make business sense for me? Is there a path forward with this for me? And nobody can really answer that question for you. It's that immense cost that you need to front in hopes of recouping it somewhere down the line when you clock in enough hours to start charging for it, and we're talking about months, not weeks. That's a pretty big risk, and it only makes sense for camera operators who are already actively working in the industry. So if you already have connections and get consistent work for them, then yeah, at some point you can just tell them that, hey, I'm a Steadicam operator now. And if you do get into that consistent rotation, then yeah, you can realistically pay off the rig within a year's time. And then there are guys like me. Not being a part of the film industry and with no realistic way of continuing this Steadicam journey, I felt like the odd one out, like a tourist. I mean, nobody made me feel that way, everybody was super nice and kind, but I just had these very heavy imposter syndrome vibes. I don't regret going, it was an awesome experience, but I do wish I'd thought it through a little more. I came in without a plan really. I wanted to try Steadicam for the longest time, I saw this opportunity, it was local, and I pulled the trigger. And now being on the other side of it, I think you should try to put yourself in one of the two buckets. If you are Steadicam curious like I was, but don't have any real plan in place of continuing on this journey, then maybe try the bronze workshop first. If on the other hand you are a working operator and you plan on stepping up to Steadicam and plan to invest in the rig, then the gold workshop might be a better fit for you. I mean, why not get all the time you can get with the instructors, and you can just count that cost as a part of the initial investment. So I feel like this Silver Plus workshop is in this weird middle ground where it's too expensive for just try Steadicam experience, and for the serious operators with intentions of buying their own rig, the gold workshop might make more sense. But there of course might be other factors affecting your decision, mainly if a particular workshop is available in your region or what kind of travel arrangements you can swing. And again, just speaking for myself, I had an amazing time and I don't regret going. So there you have it, just my 2 cents. I hope this was helpful to somebody, and thank you for watching, and maybe I'll see you in the next video.